Awesome. I'm here. I'm on air. And I think I've got a little bit of a delay. I'm hoping a few of you can join me live, but if not, that's a-okay. Maybe I'll give it just a couple more minutes to get started. See if anyone's here. Welcome, welcome. I think I'm just gonna get going. And for those of you that hop on, that would be awesome. So welcome. My name is Allegra Stein. I am at allegrastein.com, and today marks the very first number one of my conscious talks. I ran the first one this morning in person, and I'm rerunning the same talk live at night virtually for anyone who can't be there in person and live. This is live at this moment. A little bit of housekeeping. This is my first time using Crowdcast, so I hope it goes over all right. There is a chat window on the right-hand side. Hi, Rumi. It's so good to see you. There is a chat window over on the right-hand side. Hopefully, Rumi, you can see it kind of floating. And then underneath the window where you're watching me is a section where you can ask questions. And as I am going along and sharing the content, I encourage you to ask questions in the space below, because there's a 20-second delay on the feed. So if you're typing questions as you see me speaking, I won't be getting them for another 20. So it might feel like the timing's off. So if you have questions that come up, type them in the questions below, and I will answer them as they come up. A really quick background. These conscious talks are a commitment that I have made to show up every Wednesday and serve with insights and lessons and things that I learned through my own work, the coach, and I want to bring to all of you. So I will be here every Wednesday at 8. There is a new theme every week, and if you're here, if you're registered to this, you'll be on a list where I will send the weekly updates. You can unsubscribe if you would rather not get those updates, but there is a unique Crowdcast link every week, and there will be a different theme every week that you can very quickly register for now that you have a Crowdcast account. There's nothing to sell. There is no pitch. All that I ask is that you invite your friends. Tell people about it. If you enjoy what you see tonight, the link that you can send people to register for the next one is allegrastein.com/conscious talks. I'll put that actually in the chat window. So it's there, talks. So it's over there in the chat window, and that is a link where you can send people if you think that they would enjoy it. So I encourage you to invite as many as you would like, to share it on your channels, because that's really all I'm here to do, is try and connect with and serve as many people as I can every week. I think that's it with the housekeeping. Again, if you have questions that come up that feel a little bit more off topic, you can type them in the chat window. Just know that I might not see them as they are coming because of the time delay. So the topic tonight is microaction, and I want to start with a couple of metaphors. I love using metaphors to explain bigger, more emotional topics. So at first, I want you to imagine that you're standing in front of a big cement wall, and behind that big cement wall is a lake. So it's a dam, so to speak, but you're right up next to it. And every day you inspect the wall. And one day you notice that a drop of water has appeared on the wall. It's just in there. Oh, there's a little drop of water, mysterious. So you wipe it away. And the next day you come back and there's another drop of water. Boop, and you wipe that drop of water away. A week later you come back and you realize that there's 3 drops of water, and there's actually this tiny little hairline fracture in the wall. So you wipe the drops away, and a week after that, that one hairline fracture has become 5 little hairline fractures splintering out, and more water is starting to trickle through, and so on and so forth, until one day you get a phone call that the dam broke, and all the water rushed out and washed the little village away. So that's the first metaphor I want you to keep in mind. The second metaphor that I love to use, and if you and I have ever spoken one-on-one, you've likely heard me talk about this, is Mount Everest. When I think of Mount Everest, we usually picture that wide angle shot of this massive natural phenomenon of stone and ice and rock and ice just reaching up into the heavens, and it's this massive peak. Or we also might picture those individuals who climb Mount Everest making it to the top, and they're hanging their flags and just celebrating in that moment, and it feels so momentous. But if you let yourself zoom in, so you have Mount Everest and you start to zoom in to Mount Everest, you suddenly start to see a little ant on the side, and as you zoom in closer and closer and closer, you realize that there is a man or a woman who is walking, who is taking one step at a time to climb this massive peak. What we tend to do is think about the dam breaking. That's all people talk about. Oh, the day that the dam broke. Or we think about this overwhelming accomplishment of reaching the highest point, right, on land. And it can feel very overwhelming. And for some of us, the goals that we want to reach, or the things that we want to create in our lives, can feel huge. And it's almost unfathomable. Like, we can't imagine us doing that big thing, whatever that big thing is for us, because we just are so zoomed out and imagining this big picture. What we fail to realize, or not fail, but we don't let ourselves see a lot, is that that big accomplishment is the result of a infinite number, not infinite number, but a collection of teeny tiny little moments. One drop at a time came through that dam wall. That mountain was climbed one little step at a time. And I call those microactions. And what I want to suggest to you tonight to think about is that the individuals who you admire, who are getting big things done, who are making changes in their lives, who are creating things not out of fear, but from a place of fun and excitement and adventure, that they're not good at doing huge things. What they're really skilled at is identifying and focusing on the small thing at a time. Because if you can get good at that, if you can get really clear on what your next step is, and you can commit to taking that micro action, it will add up. And all of a sudden you'll be like, oh my gosh, I've done this big thing. Completing the big project is the result of all of those actions, and not this far off, overwhelming thing that you're trying to achieve. So what I wanted to share with you tonight are some things to keep in mind on how to plan and pick your next micro action. I think what I want to do, what I'm curious about, so I wanted to see what questions have popped up. Again, for those of you who have just shown up, although I think you're watching this from the beginning, if questions come up as I go over some of this personal to you, please enter them in the question window down below. You can submit it there, and you can also kind of like vote on questions that you like and move them closer to the top. So have fun with the platform. I think it could be really cool. Okay, so here's some things to keep in mind about picking a next step if there's something that you want to create in your life. The first question is, do you even want to climb? Okay, I had a very powerful conversation with a woman who's done a lot of amazing things. And in her mind, she actually wasn't looking out over a bunch of mountains. She was at the ocean. And it was a very peaceful, calm place for her. And she was saying, you know, I don't want to create these big challenges in my life. I'm ready to just kind of sit still and be on this plateau. And that's awesome. So the first thing to ask yourself is there a change that you actually want to make? I think change can be inspiring. It can be uncomfortable. It can be revelatory. We can learn about ourselves through these moments of commitment and creating bigger things, but they're totally optional. So really ask yourself if you want to be doing something different, if you want to embark on that journey or not. So that's the first question. The second thing to do and ask yourself is, do you have a mountain? Is there something that you want to create, something so compelling and magical and that when you think about it, it's almost like nothing can stop you? it's possible that you have a number of mountains. I mean, I've talked to a number of people about this idea, and in the talk this morning, one of the attendants was saying, well, I'm actually kind of in a valley and there are lots of mountains. There are lots of possible things that I could do. And I know that some of you watching are in a position like that now, where it's like, well, how do I decide what I want to commit to? What do I even take a micro action on? So the second step is letting yourself get clear on what those things are that you want. And one of the ways that I like to suggest doing that is to take a piece of paper and allow yourself to draw out what is at the top of any mountain that you could start to climb. I call them could mountains. So, for example, another woman who was there this morning was talking about these potential job opportunities she could create for herself. Well, there's this one opportunity, it's a bit further away, and then there's opportunity B, which is a little bit closer, and it would be look this way. There's opportunity C, which is totally different. So what I suggested to her is let yourself brainstorm what all of those opportunities would look like at the top. Let's say you took the action towards one of them, you created all this stuff, you climbed the mountain. What would the top look like to you? And map that out on a piece of paper. Opportunity A, mountain A. This is what I would be doing. This is what it would look like. This is how it would affect my life. It's kind of like this big imagination process. And put them up on the wall in front of you. And get clear on what your mountains are. What are the things that you would want to do if you chose to create and take action and start making things happen? Now, I've also been in conversation with people who are very clear on what their next step is. Very clear on, no, this is what I want. This is what would be at the top for me if I really committed to start climbing and doing things to start making this happen. So we're all in different positions. I get that. But until you know what you're working towards, what is going to make it worth it, the individual who actually decides to climb Mount Everest has a picture in their mind. There's some external goals that they want to reach. They actually want to physically exert themselves. They want to get to the top. They want to have that massively physical, intense experience of climbing. And there's also an internal piece that they picture. They picture the sense of accomplishment and pride and commitment and doing something that they once thought was impossible. So let yourself draw out what those mountains are and what those possibilities are, your could mountains, so to speak. Okay, so you've decided you want to climb. You've helped yourself get clear on what that mountain looks like, what those possibilities are. The third thing is to ask yourself, is this mountain, or amongst all these, which ones are a 10? I think I might do another talk about this, but there's a wonderful book that I recently read called Only Tens, and it's available digitally. And I apologize that I don't have the author's name in front of me, but I'll find it and I'll share it after the talk. And he really talks about making the distinction between what a 10 is in your life and what that is compared to, let's say, a 9, an 8, or even a 9.9. And another way that I like to put this is when you look at all these possible mountains that you want to climb, which ones are 10s that when you look at, you just feel deep down is right for you? A 10 is like, will rouse you out of bed. A 10 will you know what a 10 feels like. You've all had that experience of doing something that's so true to who you are and feels so right that nothing will stop you. That's what a 10 feels like. An alternative to a 10 is maybe a should mountain or a must mountain or a have to mountain. Like, well, I should do this, or my partner told me that that's the one I should be doing, or I have to do those things. So ask yourself, before you pick the mountain, get clear on whether it's something that is true for you, you truly want the effort into, knowing how difficult it could be, or is it more of a 9 or an 8 or a 5? And once you've really allowed yourself that moment of saying, this is something that is clearly part of me and what I want to be doing, then you can start to say, all right, well, what would be the very first step? If this is where I want to get, and here's the picture that I'm super jazzed up about, what's the very first tiny step I'm going to take? So that brings me to step 4. Step 4 is to zoom in, to go from that wide angle of, all right, here's this math awesome thing that I'm ready to conquer and tackle, and zooming into the level of the ant and to the level of the person who's walking. And asking yourself, all right, what is the next tiny little micro action that I could take, will take, want to take, to move myself closer to my goal? Now, here are some things, some pitfalls to watch out for. The first thing to watch out for is the micro action too general? Is it too general? So by that, I mean, if you, let's say your big project that you want to commit to is to write a book, and your micro action is, well, I guess I got to start writing, right? That's the thing, Allegra, I got to start writing. I am going to say to you, well, how much do you want to start writing? Like, how much do you want to write? How much do you want to write tomorrow? Let's pick tomorrow. Do you want to write 100 words, 1 word? Do you want to write for 10 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds? Allow yourself to get really specific. If your next step is, well, I have to raise a certain amount of money, sometimes that can be a next step. How much money? Put a number to it, because when we have numbers, we can make it more of a game, and you can get super specific about how it's easy to break that up into smaller and smaller parts. You know, when someone is climbing, let's say a mountain, again, using this metaphor, they don't just say, I'm going to go climbing today. They say, well, I'm going to climb to the next stop, or I'm going to climb a certain number of miles or for a certain amount of time. And allowing yourself to be specific makes it easier to break down into smaller parts. So don't be too general, get specific. Another thing to watch out for are false micro steps or excuses. And to highlight this, I'm going to share an example of a client of mine. She took a big leap a few years ago and started climbing this brand new, awesome, exciting mountain. And she's at a point in her path now where she wants to maybe transition again and start doing something different. So we talked about this. She got really clear what's at the top of her mountain. It was motivating. She was lit up. She was ready to go. And I said, okay, well, if this is going to happen, what would be your very next step? What would your first teeny tiny micro action be? Because micro actions add up and have massive results. And she kind of hinted, well, I got to start telling people about it. But before I can do that, I need to do step A, step B, step C, and step D. I need to put these little pieces into place. I said, okay, well, let's talk about them. Let's talk about step A. What's the first part of getting step A done? She said, well, oh, actually, step A is already done. All right, well, what about step B is done, and step C is done, and step D is done. So we realized that the things that she thought were her next steps were actually excuses for what the real step was, which was telling people about it. So, sorry, I just want to make sure. Oh, the broadcasting has stopped. I wonder why. I hope you guys are still there. So there's only one person. Someone just told me the broadcasting has stopped. Let me see if it comes back. If anyone's watching live and could tell me if it's still around, that would be helpful in the chat window. So, watch out for false steps and watch out for excuses that are kind of masking what the real next step would be. I kind of liken this, I compare this also to being stuck. When someone says to me, well, I'm stuck, I usually like to dig in there a little bit. And I like to dig in there a little bit and say, I don't believe that you're stuck. I believe that you out there know what your next step is. That stuckness usually is hiding a resistance to take the step. Because again, when where are you stuck? We get more specific, more specific, more specific. And they say, well, what I really need to do, the next step would be this. Then it's not a matter of being stuck. It's a matter just of not committing, of not taking the step that we know we need to take. And they're different. I'd rather someone say, I know what the step is, but I'm choosing not to take it, than I don't know what the next step is. Because one of them has power and one of them feels a little bit like hopeless. Like, I don't know. That it doesn't have as much energy as, oh, I know. And I'm just waiting. I'm just not doing it yet. This is kind of linked to a feeling called pteric-cytified, and I might do another talk around pteric-cytified, but a pteric-cytified step usually is the one. Like if you're stuck, It's usually because the next action, the next micro action, is terrixidifying, which is a combination of terrifying and excited. So ask yourself, like, okay, of all these different things, which one is terrixidifying? And that's usually the one. That's the one to walk towards. So I say, find terrixidifying and walk towards it. So keep your eyes peeled for that possibility as well when you're considering what your next step is. A next step, a micro action, might be counterintuitive. It's not necessarily an action you do with your body. Yes, your next micro action might be making a phone call. It might be hitting send on an email. It might be publishing or posting something or speaking something out loud, or an actual physical movement that you need to make. But your next micro action might be finding information. I know a few of you out there have shared your stories with me. And as I'm listening, I'm thinking, well, what would you do with some more information? Maybe your next step is allowing yourself to stop thinking too much and say, well, what do I need to find out? So perhaps finding out information is your next step. Perhaps stopping is your next micro action, especially if you're watching and you're one of those constantly moving, like, I got to keep going, going, going. Your next micro action might be to stop and to slow down. And linked to that, a micro action for you might be to say no to something. And that's yet another topic that I might share during one of my conscious talks is, are there things that are taking up your space that if you just allowed yourself to say no to, the true next step would become more clear to you? It's very easy to fill ourselves with static and like just keep walking down tiny little paths. Whereas if you just let yourself breathe and close your eyes, the true one that you want to be on becomes much more clear. So those are the different kinds of micro actions. If questions have come up about that, please submit them in the question section down below if there's something specific you want to share. Kind of tied to all of this now, as you have this micro action, is to make it so tiny that it almost feels silly not to do it. You know, when I imagine that guy or that girl on that mountain, oftentimes it comes down to, can I take one more step? I can take one more step. Can I take one more step? I can take one more step. Here's another example of someone I'm in conversation with. Her name is Laura. She too had built a very successful career in one field and is now wanting to transition and really kind of mold that and shape that into this new vision that she has. And her next step, or her step was, she's hence started making it, was to create videos, just to start getting her stuff out through video, which she really liked. We got through the excuses. It turned out that she had all the stuff already set. She had the lights and the space and the setting and the camera. She knew exactly, she could have gone and done it. And it really just came down to the micro action of sitting down and creating the video. So I kind of broke it down for him, like, well, could you do one video a day? Like one 30-second video a day? And we kind of kept piecing it apart until she said, oh yeah, I could do that. And that's like a magic moment. When I hear that kind of voice, like, yeah, of course, like that's easy. Or for the other woman I was speaking of whose action is to start telling people, well, can you tell one person today? Like, yeah, I can tell one person. Great. That's all it needs to be. It's just one drop. We're just one drop at a time, right? And then the dam will break. So bring it down to something. If it doesn't feel almost elementary, then there might be room to make it even smaller. And again, it's not about the size, but about the action and that moment of commitment and making something happen. So the final thing, step number 5 or 6 or wherever I'm at, is to commit. You identify the mountain, you get clear, you let yourself examine what the micro, you get clear on what your micro action is. You know it's not an excuse, like this is actually the thing. The act then is to commit to it. And a few things can happen when you actually start taking action. This is where it gets fun. You start taking the micro action, a few things happen. One, you start building momentum. So things actually start to happen. You start telling people about your next project and it starts to build and people are talking and the energy happens. You're like, this is amazing. I'm on the right path. This feels great. A second thing might happen in that you realize that it actually isn't the right path for you. You might start doing this thing, and I know a few of you out there are in the middle of taking action, and you're realizing like, this isn't the path that I thought it was. I imagine like actually standing at the top of a mountain. Now I'm at the top of the mountain. Sorry, the change in perspective. And I'm going around a path and I don't know what's around there. So you have two choices. You either sit and wonder, is it going to work out around that corner? Or do you go and find out? I am an advocate of finding out. So you might start going and realize this isn't right, and that's great. I think that's awesome. I think knowing something isn't right is as powerful as knowing something is. So you might find that it's not quite what you thought and you need to go a different way. The third thing that could happen is what a number of you have brought up in other questions is you could fail. Failure is a big thing to talk about and explore. I'm not going to go way deep into it tonight, but perhaps in another week I will. Failure is essentially when things don't work out like we expect. That's what it means to fail. We think one thing is going to happen and then another thing happens. So it's not the failure that we're so afraid of. It is our perception of what failure means. Like, oh, well, I tried this and it didn't work. It failed. Is different than I tried it, it didn't work. I'm a horrible person. I tried it, it didn't work. I made a huge mistake. I never should have done that. I tried it, it didn't work. I'm incapable. I'm awful because I failed. So one thing, a place for you to explore if failure is something that's on your radar, like I don't want to fail. I don't want to mess up. What if it doesn't work? Is to try and re-examine your relationship with failure. And I wrote it down today when I was talking with my in-person crew. And I said, our willingness to fail is equal to our willingness to climb. Because in that moment, we cannot know what the future holds. In any moment, you cannot know what the future holds. And if we hold on, if we try too hard, say, well, I'll only do it if it works out a certain way, it keeps us in this limbo. Because the truth is you don't know how it's going to work out. So sometimes the question is not, will it work out, but do I want to discover who I am along this journey? Do I want to find out who I am if it fails? That is a question you can really get your mind around and start to think on and be like, huh, I do. I want to know who I am if this doesn't work out, because it means I've done something. I've taken a micro action and I'm going to see what the results are. So those are kind of my nuts and bolts generalized steps on figuring out your mountain, hopefully getting a sense of what a micro action is, and this idea that it's not about doing the big thing all at once, but figuring out those tiny steps and then committing to taking them. What I would love to do now, I'm going to move over to the chat. I love seeing a few of you are here. I had to reconnect. I'm in HD. I had to reconnect a few minutes ago. Oh, hi, Karen. Okay, so this is cool. For those of you, again, if this is your first time using Crowdcast, the questions down below, I'm going to mark as I'm recording that I'm starting to answer them. You'll see the question pop up in front of you. And then when you come back to watch this, or if you are watching this in a delay or the next day, not live, you can just click on the question below and it will take you to the point in the broadcast where I'm answering it. So I'm going to start with Rumi because she was one of the first ones. And Rumi asked, or just very simply stated, making a transformation. And again, all of this is transformation, change, deciding that we want to explore a different thing to create something new in our lives, not out of fear, but from a place of fun and curiosity, I think is awesome. I think that's when we discover who we are. So I'd be curious, Rumi, and you didn't share a lot of details. I'd love to know, and you can email me directly or share more here if we have the time, what transformation you're thinking about. Allow yourself to get clear on what it is. Imagine you've done the transformation and you're where you want to be. Allow yourself to sit there for a bit and draw it out and map it out. Like, this is what I would commit to creating. And that's like picturing what's at your mountaintop. But thank you for submitting that question. It was awesome. Now I'm going to move on to the next question that came through from Roberto. Roberto, I hope you are watching. I know that was part of our agreements in the email that we set up. And I know that you have a lot of decisions ahead of you. So Roberto's question was, you know, action is really needed this time. Still, things from the past make you second guess or get scared of how things might not work out. And now you have the added limited money and resources on top of that. Maybe there's enough to take action, but maybe just a couple of tries. We can't really afford failure What should one do? Thanks. So Roberto, I love that you asked this. The question highlights a topic that I like to refer to as time travel thinking. And it's super easy to let our regrets about the past and our anxieties about the future dictate what is going to happen right now. And right now, the only thing ahead of you is whatever the next tiny little step is going to be. So, and to your point about failure, I'm curious just what your thoughts are on, now that I've shared some of my ideas on failure. I'd love for you to email me and let me know, or share in the chat window how reframing failure in your mind perhaps shifts a bit of the path that you'd like to consider going down. I want you also to let yourself map out all these different potential paths that you have, because I sense that you have a number of them. So imagine you figured all this stuff out. What could you do? What path could you follow in this mountain here, mountain A? What could you do at mountain B? What could you do if you went this way? And let yourself get those in paper out of your mind in front of you on a wall. And I suspect once you have it out of your head and where you can look at it, it creates a sense of removedness where you can actually look at it and say, which one actually feels most right? Which one is terrifying? Not terrifying and not too easy, but one where I'm actually going to create growth and change and discovery for myself. So I hope that helps, Roberto. I look forward to being in touch. I know we will be soon. All right, the next question, and this is one of the last ones. This is from Lee. Hi, Lee. I'm curious to see, I'm just going to see real quick. Size here, and Jackie, Jared, Karen. Ooh, this is awesome. Okay. This question is from Lee. And Lee asks, it's not always obvious which tiny step in particular would make the best first tiny step. Oftentimes you can come at a big project from various angles and chip away at various facets of it. So how can we determine which step should come first? By what criteria can we assess the potential of various possible first steps? How can we choose one that promises to kick things off successfully and that will inspire us to continue on to step 2 and step 3 and 4 and on and on? So I love this question. There are a couple of things within that I might tease out and pick apart a little bit. The first one, because I look for language like this, is which step should come first. That suggests that there's a right and a wrong. And I very much hold the belief that there is no wrong step. In fact, I think the quickest way to feel like nothing's happening is to do nothing. Inaction truly is what keeps us stuck. There is no wrong first step, because every step is going to lead to something else. You are where you're at right in this moment because of every step you've chosen and taken up until this moment. And they've all been right, because you're exactly where you are, which is perfect. So if we can free ourselves from this pressure to figure out the absolutely right thing, and what that usually means is we want to be able to predict the future. We want to be able to say, I know with certainty that this step along this path is going to be the right one. It butts up against this reality that we know deep down that we cannot ever know that there is no way to know if the next step you take is going to lead you down the path of perfection. There is no path of perfection. There's only the one you're on. Any choice you make is going to be the right choice. And I think if you're in that moment of, well, I could do this, back in that could space, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, to let yourself sit with it and listen to that deeper voice and really ask that deeper voice, which is the right one for me right now? Which is the 10? Which is the one that is calling to me? It might be the terror-excitifying one. The 10s are usually terror-excitifying because we want them so badly, and there's a lot of fear around, well, what if they don't work out? Or what if they do? Who will I be if this happens? So I might push back a little bit and say, I believe that we usually know what the one is that's right for us. It is in choosing that and committing to that where the magic happens and where it can feel most zingy But that's where the growth is. That's what takes us up the mountains and not just kind of like circling around. So thanks, Lee. That was an awesome question, and I would love to know your insights on it next time we're in touch. And finally, I'm going to answer Karen's question because she's awesome. I hope she made it on. She says, I'm in HD to reconnect a few minutes ago. Thank you, Karen, for being here and for making the effort to hop on. I know it was kind of a roundabout way of signing up, and I want to make that easier for you next time. Boop. Awesome. So we've gotten through the questions. I don't see anything has shown up on chat. If anything has popped up for you, again, as I've been speaking, feel free to share it in the chat window or share it in the questions down below. I hope that this information, these ideas have been helpful to you. It's a bit challenging and different for me to not be engaging with you live, and I can make that happen. I can invite people one at a time into the Hangout, which maybe we'll try and play around with next time. If any one of you who are watching now would like to chat live with me, you can say something in the chat window and I will invite you, and we could do some one-on-one conversation and little laser coaching. If there are questions you want to talk about directly, I would love that, because I very much thrive on direct connection and being very curious about who you are. There will be another one of these next week, next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you are registered for this first Crowdcast, you will be getting updates on the up and coming ones and the fresh links. Each Crowdcast will have its own unique link. So if you can't find it and you want to know where it is, you can find me and reach me directly. My website is allegrastein.com. There is a tab there to reach out and email me directly, which I would love for you to do. Again, if you have enjoyed this, I ask either that you share it with your circles, or even just one person. You can send them to allegrastein.com/conscious talks. Or to reach out to me directly. Send me an email. I would love to know your feedback. I would love any insights that have come out of this. What I am hoping is not that you hang up and say, that was nice. I mean, of course, I want you to think it was nice, but I'm here to serve you more than I am to please you. And I would like to think that something that maybe has come up as a result of hearing some of these things and having your questions answered incites new action from you, and that maybe you do something differently tomorrow than you would have had you not joined me tonight. So thanks again for being here. Let me just do one last check to see if there are any questions. I appreciate you all so much, and I hope to hear from every one of you directly with all of your thoughts and follow-up questions. I will see you next week, 8 p.m. Eastern. Watch out for that fresh link, and I'll talk to you then. Bye.